welcome back to the school bench. You have familiarized yourself with the steps through this program, and now we can start with a topic that you have been through several times before, AIRSPACE classes. I know your motivation has already dipped a little bit just by hearing it. I know, but it can't be overstated how vital appropriate knowledge of the airspace you are controlling is, especially on S3 level. Because what you learn in S2 was simplified and directed in getting a narrow but close understanding of especially the Delta airspace class. We now need to expand this knowledge, first of all to understand the consequences of each class, and also to understand all the classes, because you will find approach sectors in Denmark where you will control every single one of the classes we have, at different locations throughout your area of responsibility. So without further ado, here we go, and let's do a catch-up. There are a total of 7 airspace classes, with the 7th split into 2. But more on that later. They are organized from airspace class Alpha to airspace class Golf, and it depends on how restrictive they are, with class Alpha being the most restrictive and the class Golf being the least restrictive. But restrictive in regards to what? In regards to how much control you have over the traffic entering your airspace. This means what equipment do they need, which instructions do they need to follow, how fast are they allowed to fly, and of course, the most important, how are they allowed to mingle with VFR traffic. And exactly these 4 aspects are the ones that we are changing depending on each airspace class. And it is exactly this way that we tailor each airspace around the country to have the rules that are most useful to that particular situation it covers. The restrictions are outlined from ICAO to EASA to the Danish authorities, but we use our own virtual-friendly overview in Denmark to give you an overview. So these are the ones again: how to mingle between IFR and VFR, how fast to fly, whether or not aircraft are subject to clearances, and what kind of equipment must they have. All these are connected in different aspects to different airspace classes in an, surprisingly enough, very logical fashion. Let's have a look at it all. Class Alpha and Bravo are quite restrictive in terms of the above. For example, in Class Alpha, it only allows IFR flights. All traffic is separated, and maximum requirement of equipment means that you will have complete control. And note, remember that these conditions of airspace classes, no matter which one you are in, they are unchangeable. You are not allowed to deviate from any of these restrictions posed by an airspace class. So when Class Alpha says A+C mode of transponder required, you may never allow somebody without that in, regardless of whether you think it's okay or not. These requirements are set in stone and requires exceptional approval from authorities to be lifted. From there, it does though get gradually less and less restrictive. In Class Bravo, VFR is allowed in for the first time, but otherwise it's very similar to Alpha, being very restrictive. These 2 classes are not found in Denmark. That's why they are grayed out. We in Denmark don't need to be that restrictive due to our traffic amount, so we go one step further down to airspace class Charlie. This is what your busiest approach TMAs of Billund and Copenhagen are made of. One of the main differences from the 2 previous ones is the separation. VFR traffic is no longer separated from other VFR traffic. This is kind of how you know it from your S2 on tower already, though, but it solidifies Class Charlie as a restrictive airspace class where IFR is taken well care of through control service, and where clearances as well as equipment is mandatory. So while VFR flights are generally very welcome into Class Charlie, if they get permission of course, you still have to take action to ensure separation from IFR flights. This is normally done by restricting the altitude the VFRs are allowed to climb to, and then just keeping the IFR flights above that altitude. On the practical side, Class Charlie is actually used less in Denmark than you would expect. It's really only used in the TMAs of Billund and Copenhagen, these are Class Charlie. All the rest of the TMAs like Aarhus, Aalborg, Karup, Skrydstrup, Rønne, they're actually Class Delta. So make sure you remember, a TMA is not equal to an airspace Class Charlie. Moving onwards, Class Delta should not be needed to expand on too much, since as an S2 controller, you should be very well aware of the restrictions of this class. For example, that compared to Charlie, now VFR is not separated from anything, and VFR flights don't even need a transponder. For the first time, you also see that AIRSPACE is mandating a speed restriction of 250 knots for IFR, meaning you must adhere to this. There is no free speed anymore in these AIRSPACE classes. Everybody must comply. While this may not be a problem in Billund and Copenhagen, which are Class Charlie, remember the other airports are Class Delta. So when you have a departure out of, for example, Aalborg, and you think you're smart by saying free speed, you are breaking the rules. Do not break the rules, please. More interesting does it get when we start moving down to even less restrictive classes. AIRSPACE Class Echo is the most common class in Denmark. It is everything around control zones, TMAs, and other special designations in Denmark. All these are Class Echo from 3,500 feet and all the way up to flight level 195. In addition, while Copenhagen has a very large TMA and is Class Charlie all the way around, this is actually the exception. Most of the other airports actually has very small Class Charlie and Delta TMAs and larger areas of Class Echo around them, completing the area of responsibility for that approach controller. So what is the difference? Quite a bit. The main thing is that VFR is now free to fly around as they like. No contact, no transponder, no adherence to any instructions. It is in fact the first AIRSPACE class where it is completely uncontrolled for a certain type of flight rules. So if a VFR is just skipping around in your Class Echo airspace without contact, well, hate to break it to you, but he is completely allowed. Moving to Class Foxtrot, it is a bit of an odd hybrid class. It's not seen many places except in the UK. It's not seen in Denmark either, so we'll just skip that. That brings us to the last type, Class Golf, the least restrictive. No separation for anyone, not IFR, not VFR. Only that IFR needs to have a transponder and two-way radio communication, that's all. So obviously we must be very cautious about operating our IFR flights into this airspace class. Actually, EASA Part ATS TR155 specifically instructs to avoid entering uncontrolled airspace with IFRs unless on pilot request. So I told you earlier that we had a split of this 7th airspace class. This is because you have airspace class Golf in two variations in Denmark. General airspace below 3,500 feet outside of special designation, which are just uncontrolled. But you also have a different designations which are within an area of an AFIS airport. Around these airports is established what we call flight information zones or transponder mandatory zone. This is to use the exact ICAO phrases. The main thing about these is they have to be manned by an AFIS controller. In these zones, VFR flights must also have two-way radio contact so the proper information service can be given. Now, before we finish this whole thing up, there is another aspect to your airspace classes that we have not talked about before, which we should. It is concerned with meteorology and weather. It is the weather minima for VFR aircrafts, and you need to have a somewhat understanding of this as well. The VMC minima, the visual meteorological conditions, is a limit below which you should not allow VFR to fly. It is, in general, pretty easy and inconsequential from an ATC point of view. It's 5 kilometers of visibility and 1,500 meters of distance to the cloud, as well as 1,000 feet above or below. There are only a couple of differences that need to be made aware of. AIRSPACE Class Golf is just 1,500 meters and clear of clouds in the circuit of an airfield field, and 3 kilometers outside it. But who cares? It's uncontrolled anyway, so what can you do? The other one is Class Delta. That's more relevant, and that's because there are special VFR minima if an VFR aircraft is flying under specially approved special VFR conditions. This lowers the minima for that class. What exactly special VFR implies is unique to each control zone and can be found in the LAI. This is the overview of the airspace classes we use in Denmark, what is required for each of them, and how to conduct yourself appropriately in them as an S3 controller. 4 of them in total: Charlie for the TMA in Billund and Copenhagen, where VFR are subject to strict rules and separation towards IFRs. Class Delta for the rest of the TMAs and the CTRs, without VFR separation, but with a mandatory 250 below level 100 restriction. Class Echo for all airspace outside the TMA above 3,500 feet, completely uncontrolled for VFR, and Class Golf below, uncontrolled for all. with two-way radio communication required for VFR inside AIRSPACE zones. You now need to dig into this theoretical knowledge and get it under control, because you need it to get the most out of the next topic, where we will move from talking just airspace classes to talk about how they fit into the specific structure of airspace in Denmark. So make sure you have the table ready, make sure you complete the lesson and understand it, and then you may continue onwards. This is the end of the lesson. Enjoy your course.